What up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Campus Cuts. I'm your host, Tanaka Tava, and Campus Cuts is an intergenerational, multicultural show that brings together athletes, entrepreneurs, students, politicians, and people from all walks of life to chop it up in the virtual barbershop. Today, I got a special guest, basketball player, founder, creator, writer, futurist, the man, the myth, the legend, the head of product design at Fortress, a crypto company, and as well as just an overall decent human being from the first moment that we met. I have the privilege and the honor to be able to host Mr. Brady Patterson on the podcast. What up, Brady?
Bless. Thank you so much for having me on today, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, bro. I'm super grateful. By the way, I just want to give a quick plug. Um, Brady is the founder of the Hustler Blueprint. And man, this journal, I've already been using it, bro. Thank you for the gift. This is so good. Like honestly, this is so good. I'm a journaler and man, thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're finding value in it.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, bro. But of course, I gave you my little introduction. But for the people who are new to the show, if you're watching for the first time, Campus Cuss was really just a movement that I started out of my college basement, out of the basement of my college university, Baylor University, down in the student union building. It was just an idea, a brainchild after having the influence of LeBron James and Joe Rogan and just the power of having a conversation and what type of depth that it has. So Brady, I want to, of course, I introduced you, but I want you to give a little intro of yourself, your name, what you do, where you're living, and where you're from, and we're just going to go dive in from there.
Awesome. Yeah. My name is Brady Patterson. I grew up in a small town called Lima, Ohio, up in Northwest Ohio, not too far from Detroit. Went to college at the Savannah College of Art and Design. Have bounced around to a bunch of cities, San Francisco, LA, and now have found myself in Austin, where we both work at the Capital Factory. So, yeah, I'm super excited to be on the show, man, and really just connect and talk about all of our creative endeavors.
Yes, 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 yes. You are a creative indeed, but behind every creator is a backstory, bro. So I want you to dive in. Like, what is? Yeah, you gave the 30, but what was your first step into? You feel like coming of who you are. Like I want you to go through all the way back in Ohio. What was Brady then into who you are now?
Yeah, so I've actually always been an artist. My mom worked at a Hobby Lobby, so I basically grew up in an art store. So, growing up, all of my Christmas presents and everything would be paints and markers. And I was just a very, very creative kid from the time I was in kindergarten. So, and at the same time, I was always an athlete. I was playing football, basketball, baseball year round. And I always found a way to fuse those two things. So growing up, I would be drawing NBA logos and selling them for 25 cents so people could hang them up in their locker. And I was customizing Air Force Ones and doing custom puffy paint T-shirts for people back in the day, back in 2005 when Soldier Boy was hot. So I had always been this very, very creative kid. And I'm just blessed to be able to, now as an adult, make a living through my creativity, because there was a lot of people in our small town that, didn't think that you could ever make a living as an artist. So I am living proof that, creatives are taking over the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's just talk about that. Like, they say the creative adult is the kid who never grew up. And it's just always talking about being able to make sure like protecting your inner child and kind of having that Peter Pan type feel, but of course being able to walk the nuance of the adult life. Talk about that journey of how it was to be able to make sure, like, what did you do to in order to protect your inner child and make sure that it was never crushed by the outside opinion?
Yeah, so interesting enough, I lost that for 3 or 4 years. So
Wow.
Going into college, I had the option to either go to art school or go and play college football. And being from a small town, I was really pushed towards going the college football route. And I was told, you'll never make money as an artist. You should think about something that, is going to, have a solid career option, like a lawyer or an accountant. So I kind of got off the path. I went and played college football my freshman year, dropped out. I had a 1.3 GPA. I had no clue what I wanted to do. And for 3 years after that, I didn't do any art at all.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was around the age of 23, 24 when I decided to go back to community college for graphic design. And I immediately started to tie in my past as an athlete with graphic design. So I used to play AAU basketball, and I started partnering with some of my former coaches and peers that were now in the coaching ranks, and I was doing logos and jersey designs and t-shirt designs, posters, anything that they needed, and doing it totally for free just to build up my portfolio. And tying that back in was the beacon that allowed me to like start my career. So through that, I built a portfolio on Behance. And one day the creative director of the 49ers just happened to follow me. And I reached out and asked for, some feedback and help on my portfolio. And we just stayed in touch. And then when it came time for me to look for an internship, it just so happened they had just posted that they were looking for an intern. And I had never been to San Francisco before, but went through the whole process of applying. And, that opportunity is really what jump-started my career. And it was living in passion and truth that, allowed me to, make the impact that I'm making today.
Yeah. It sounds like you went through what they call it, a dark night of the soul, bro. Like, one, I'm really interested in how you navigated. Like, what were you doing in between those 3 years? Just out of curiosity, like, what was your life like? Like, what was your day to day?
Yeah, so I had moved from my hometown in Lima, Ohio to Columbus, the capital. And I was actually working in a mailroom uh,
Yeah.
in this massive building on Broad Street, like right by the state building there. And I was just sorting mail. And, I was spending a lot of time alone in the basement by myself with this, decent job that I had. I was making like $13, $14 an hour, which was amazing to me at the time.
Right.
But that's actually where I picked up journaling is, I was trying to figure out a way to, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I kept switching majors. I was trying, I tried out criminal justice for a while. I went to a broadcasting school and was working as a cameraman for a AAA baseball team. And then just picking up odd jobs and was really miserable. I didn't know, how I could ever get to a point where I would even just make a decent living in life. So once I found graphic design, the building blocks slowly started to come back together, and I started to tie all of my past experiences in a way that, really jump started and allowed me to be where I am today.
Yeah, man, that one, that's really powerful and transformative, because the fact of the matter is, most of the time, like, how most success stories go, or like the short snippet of social media is just like one person went from here to here. Oh my gosh, yay. Or it's a very traditional path. And again, with any creative or any artist or anybody that is in the field of entrepreneurship, the path is filled with a lot of various twists and turns. And I really want to dive into deep, like, how did you find journaling? Because obviously you have a wonderful product, but like, what thing led you to be able to journal? Because most people don't realize that our thoughts are very powerful. Our thoughts do come reality. We are not our thoughts, but what permeates in our subconscious mind. And then when we speak things into existence, we literally are playing, like, and planning our future out. And so, like, of course, and then journaling is a great way to be able to transmute everything that's inside onto a piece of paper from the, unmanifest to the manifest, getting metaphysical here, but like, how did you find that the discovery for you to journal? Like you went from the depths of the basement, the bottom, to now. I'm
Yeah, so
very intrigued.
for me it was I actually, so I'm Greek, and I've always been into Greek and Roman culture. And, I was reading about Marcus Aurelius, and I came across his diaries and how, he would, every day, he would sit down and just write in his journal. And growing up, for me, that was drawing, that was painting. It was like, that was the way that I expressed myself. And, I could lose myself in my thoughts and think about where I really wanted to be in life. So when I first picked up journaling, it was more of just a daily brain vomit. I would just fill a page and just write whatever came to my mind, whatever was stressing me out, whatever plans and ideas that I had. And then over time, it really adapted to be more of something that I was using to plan and to, show gratitude and affirmations. And then I started picking up some different types of planners, but they didn't really speak to me in the way that, the Hustler Blueprint eventually did. So yeah, it was a slow progression from just putting all of my thoughts on the paper to creating a structure around how I could plan out my projects and plan my day and, plan out my life for success.
Bro, the power of the written, the power of the pen. And again, because it's just like you created something that you wanted for you. And that's how most any creative endeavor is like, oh, yeah, you might want to do it for other people, but really it's for you. And bro, like this blueprint, bro, again, I'm just giving you your flowers. It's just talk about the nuances and the inspiration behind how you built your product out anyway.
Yeah, so I was trying out a bunch of different planners, and the origin story actually happened during COVID. So I was working at Fox Sports at the time as a product designer, and I was working on a product for the MLB. And March 2020 came around, the MLB season gets pushed back, COVID pops off, and they lay everybody off of the team. So that night, I sat down and I was like, I'm going to start a business right now. I don't know what that business is going to be, but I'm going all in. If I'm going to be on unemployment for a couple months, I'm going to create something and come out of this with, an actual asset. So that night, I had just filled, I think it was a full focus planner. And this is like the fifth or sixth different type of planner that I had tried. And I really liked the structure of it, but I was like, this could be so much more if there was hip hop and sports and elements of culture in it that kind of guided you through the process instead of being, more of a blank slate. So I rolled out a big piece of paper all the way across my wall, started the design thinking process of starting with why and, how might we statements. So I went through that whole process of really thinking deeply about what I could offer a product like this and why I was creating it. And it took about a year before it actually hit the market, but that was, how it originated at the very beginning.
And again, most people who aren't there's some people who might be familiar in my audience, like, because they know, they know me, but of course, the design thinking process is something that was established back in the 1960s or 70s, or I know got really big with IDEO, and how you're being able because most people really just build with the intention of, yo, we build it, we just give it to everybody, rather than thinking about being more customer centric and thinking about more user centric and all that stuff. Before I dive deeper into understanding your why with the blueprint, like I wanted to understand your mindset. Did you always feel like you had that mindset innately, like within, just through everything that you started, or is that something that you had to develop and cultivate?
Definitely something that I developed and cultivated. So early on, I was always an artist. I had a business in high school. I used to paint custom beer pong tables and cornhole tables and just like anything somebody would need in the Midwest customized. I would mostly do like Ohio State or University of Cincinnati logos or Cleveland Browns. So I always thought of myself as an artist. And then when I transferred to the Savannah College of Art and Design through my graphic design studio classes, we read Change by Design by Tim Brown, who was one of the founders of IDEO, who also just happens to be from Ohio, represent. But that really changed my perspective on what I was doing. I always was, creating things for myself, but I never thought about it from an impact perspective. So the design thinking methodology really gave me that like business level thought process. And I also think that it helped that I had worked in the corporate world for a couple of years and I was a lot older than the rest of the art students there. So like that thought process really started to come together for me when I was at SCAD.
I really loved how fact that you said creating things from an impact point of view. Because I mean, of course, that's something that we talked about briefly whenever we first interacted with. But it's just like, because most of the time when people think impact, they're trying to impact like scale. It's just like by looking at and doing the fine tune of the details, these fine tunes of the details and then by just literally doing it, and it because of like it's just differentiate between a person, like for one person, it just hits them, like I don't know. I just always get hyped up, whatever thing, whether it's a podcast, whether it's my clothing brand, whether it's the app that I created, the website, or just like, I don't know, like when you just come from a designer's point of view, because before then, like, I bet you watched the Steve Jobs video where he said, man, most people walk through life. This was like 1983. And it's like, you can work a good job and whatever. Good. Like, he's like, I want you to bounce around the walls and hit the walls because this life, everything that we're here in this life was made up by somebody that was not smarter than you. And you can literally push, like, I feel like design is just like a way of just pushing our imprint. And not just because like, oh, I want to see it, but when it's a use case, that is so powerful. Like I bro, like my mind, ever since I got into design thinking and thinking as a product designer, I'm always thinking wherever I go, who made the lights? Wait, where did this canvas come from? Who created this computer? Like, and then and again, because you're like, being so passive in life is boring, but you gotta wake up. But something got to push you there. Like, how do you feel whenever you do design? I don't know, bro. I get so excited.
Yeah, it's really, for me, it's a way of seeing the world. So I can't say that I always saw the world that way, but through my studies and through learning about design thinking, you start to question everything. You're like, why is the font like this on this billboard? Why are they using these colors instead of these colors? Why is this e-commerce website using, this certain type of layout or this, PayPal integration? Everything you see in the world was designed and made for a very specific purpose. So, living your life and seeing the world through an artist or designer's lens is actually really helpful because you're constantly seeing ways to improve the world around you. And your mind is always running on how things could be better, which can be a positive and a negative, because sometimes you can get lost in that and you can, be in a very, very negative place and be very critical of your own work even. But when you really focus in and use it for good, it's very, very powerful.
Yeah, very, very powerful. And also, like, I think it's it's a double-edged sword. It can be scary, right? Because we've seen design, specifically, we look at Facebook, Meta, Instagram, for examples, or just even the gun or swords and all that stuff. Such intricate, delicate, useful tools that were whatever, but then because of human nature and our desires of just, just being human, it can just be like on the edge of just creating bloodshed.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's even working in crypto, that is what drew me to the space. So I've only been working in crypto for 2 months now, but I saw the UX problems they were having, and just
Mm,
identifying, getting into the space and using Discord and, setting up your wallets and setting up a Coinbase and a MetaMask. I'm like, there are so many simple usability problems that if you just bring the right design and user experience into the room, all of this can be fixed. So
mm,
that's what was really exciting for me to kind of make that transition into the space.
mm. What so within, of course, you're very a novice, right, into the crypto world, and obviously everything is moving so fast when it comes to like the restructuring of financial technology and financial literacy. And we discussed how we used EYL, of course, as an example of like people who are democratizing that at scale. What do you feel like from your perspective can be done to make sure that people of color or people from like lower socioeconomic backgrounds don't get left behind? Because it's like that world moves so fast, and there's people like
Definitely. And it's all about education at the end of the day. So this kind of ties back into the TED talk that I just watched that you did, talking about LeBron and the I Promise School. I grew up in the public school system in Ohio. Lima Public Schools, historically rated at the very, very bottom of all of the public schools in the state of Ohio. So
mm,
growing up there and growing up around a very diverse community, I always am thinking of ways to give back. And that's kind of the origin of even the Hustler Blueprint, is like, how can I create something that gives back to where I came from? I grew up in this place where, um, it can be very negative growing up in an environment like that. And when you don't have proper education or proper tools for expressing yourself creatively, historically, art and music are the first things that are pulled from the public schools. So nowadays,
mm,
you don't even get to take an art class. You don't even get to take a
mm,
music class. So it really all starts at a very early education level, and it's an interesting problem to solve for, because right now in the crypto space, you see a lot of the same people who have had this money forever. Now it's the hedge funds that own all the Bitcoin. It's the hedge funds that have most of the Ethereum, which puts everyone else at a disadvantage. So it's a it's an interesting problem to solve for. Is there's such a gap in education and user experience and design in the space, that right now it's very hard to onboard, you know, people of color or people who grow up in, um, you know, places where financial literacy isn't the norm. So,
mm.
it's a hard problem to solve for.
Yeah, because now we're looking at it at a macro level, right? Cash App user base, shout out Jack Dorsey, shout out Square, is primarily African American. The other product offering that is in the competition, PayPal. No. What do you call it? Venmo, which is owned by PayPal, is a completely different demographic. Indian, white, upper middle class, upper class, whatever, right?
Mhm.
And it's just so crazy because, you know, we understand that Jack Dorsey or any people, any cultural figures or whatever, like we know, well, I can be biased, but also at the end of the day, if somebody is using Square, more people that are using Square, of course, we talk about Black Twitter and all that stuff and whatever. There's a huge influence that the people of color and people of of different backgrounds who hold so much of significance of pushing it forward. Just for
Mhm.
example, I remember listening and looking at an advertisement of Meg the Stallion in the Cash App Friday and how that literally captured fire. Venmo can't do that. They cannot do that. They will not do that. I don't think they will, but it won't resonate with their audience or anything like that. And but also most of the people that utilize the product is not really for them. And it's so crazy that the fact that literally, and this is the statistical data, 73% of the Cash App user base happen to be in low income areas. Um, and it's just like, yo, if they have like if they had the access to the tools, yeah, shout out to them for making Bitcoin more accessible and whatever. But that's still not going to stop the problem because you're not giving them the direct access and information and education. Yeah, people can look at Robinhood, but really, Robinhood be Robin the Hood. If you're going to keep it a buck. And so it's just, this is something that I think about a lot, honestly, because again, of course, coming from a similar background where financial literacy or anything that had to do with like financial means was kind of taboo, or not necessarily having to play catch up and really do some scrambling around to really try to do it on our own, trying to make something out of nothing. I think it's just quite interesting, to say the least, how, because I was listening to the podcast of Morgan DeBon and Amanda Seals today, of how at the end of the day these people, and that's why it's so refreshing to see someone like you who has the experience of somebody that's gone through that and now is on the other side and literally creating a product with a certain user in mind, because most of these places are not one or two diverse, and they're only creating products for just this type of user because they get their lived experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I respect Earn Your Leisure so much, because for me, I grew up, below the poverty line. My family wasn't, we kind of bounced back and forth between middle class and being in poverty, but for the most part, we struggled growing up, and financial literacy was a huge problem for me. As soon as I would get those checks, I would go and spend them the first day. And yeah. So through my process of learning about financial literacy, I came across Earn Your Leisure, and they've impacted me in such a massive way that, I want to find ways to give back and make it easier for people like myself to come into these markets, come into the crypto world, and come into the DeFi world and understand what they're doing, and not think that it's all a scam. And right now there's so many hurdles to even being able to onboard, and the reality is you probably will get scammed at some point right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I got on Discord, I got scammed. So there's a lot of hurdles to overcome, but I think in the next 2 to 3 years we can get to a point where the user experience and the interfaces that we're building for crypto is just as easy as Robinhood, who, say what you want about them as a company, but their user experience from an app perspective is so easy.
Fire.
And right now, like I have my dad wants to get into crypto, and it's impossible for him, who he's not technologically advanced, that he just got an email like 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't know how to tell you how to do this without you falling for a scam, or you clicking on a Bitcoin Forex link and an Instagram message and somebody ransacking your wallet.
Right.
So it's really hard right now to picture how we are going to get to a place where anybody can just download a crypto wallet and be able to understand exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Right, absolutely. And now doubling back on a previous point that you said, like you're one of the first people, like around you, and this again coming from a negative environment that one would be negative or not necessarily conducive. Like, what were the steps that you took in order to get out, right? Like, what were some of the steps that you did to get out of your situation, and how did it feel to explore and to, you know, reach a certain level of independence, or just like, you know, breaking out of that survival mentality, you know, because I think that's that's something I really want to be more mindful of placing on my podcast and my content now, especially somebody from that instance, or just be more open about that. But it's just like, it's just something revolutionary of being able to break those chains and cycles, man. Like, so kudos to you, but like, how, like, what did you do, the steps, and what was that sense of, what did you feel when you're going through that?
Yeah, so some of the first steps that I took was just moving out of my hometown. I did not get to travel a lot growing up outside of like basketball tournaments. So for me, you know, coming of age and being able to move out, and I moved to Columbus. I was exposed to a much bigger city, many more people, and then the big transformation for me happened when I transferred to SCAD. So SCAD is an international art school. We have a campus in France. We used to have a campus in Hong Kong, but something around like 70% of the kids that go there are from international schools. So I started to realize that, you know, I was always really hard on myself about how I grew up and what I didn't have compared to my peers, because, you know, once I turned 18, I was on my own. I just had to go out and figure things out. You know, I didn't get a car when I was 16. I didn't have, you know, I didn't have help in any ways. My back was always up against the wall. So I had to do whatever it took to make rent for the month, or, you know, feed myself. But exposing myself in moving to Savannah, being around all of these kids who come from, you know, all over the world, and realizing how much of a privilege it was just to grow up in America. Like, we're so privileged. Like, my life, even growing up in poverty, I had so much more than a lot of these other kids did, coming from, you know, parts of Africa or the Middle East or South and Central America. So that really helped put it into perspective.
Hmm. What were some of your takeaways when you were at SCAD, bro?
Yeah, SCAD was it definitely changed my life. It made me much more grateful for where I came from. I think growing up, you kind of resent what you don't have. You kind of resent the environment that you grow up in, because everyone else around you, you know, has, you know, an amazing family, and, you know, their parents take care of them and this and that. And for me to be out there struggling, I was working a full-time job the entire time I was in school. So I was hustling and just taking advantage of every single opportunity that came my way. And it was
Hmm.
really helpful that I was older when I went there, because if I was
Hmm.
18, 19, I don't know that I would have got as much value as I did. But just the fact that I had to not only, you know, build my portfolio and, you know, learn the basics of design and user experience, but I was branding businesses in the community. I was meeting all of these amazing people in the city because I was willing to put myself out there. And, you know, I had to freelance, I had to make money. And um, that was really powerful. And it forced me to like figure out exactly who I was and exactly what I wanted to do, because um, you know, your back's up against the wall. There's nobody else is coming to save you. If I don't have rent money, you know, the school's not gonna pay for me. If I don't have the right grades, I lose my scholarship. I'm out. So it was very fruitful for me to be in that environment and to have so many amazing speakers and workshops. And, you know, Google was constantly coming in, and, you know, we're one of the top fashion design schools in the country. So being around those kids who are so passionate and so talented, and, you know, you just pick up little things from being around kids who were prodigies, and, you know, they're so passionate about what they do that you learn to take little things here and there from those kids and, combine it with your own work.
Right, right. That's so good. That is so good that you were able to get that opportunity and just those blessings. And but most people, when they don't talk about when it comes to hustling, is the ability or the lack of taking care of yourself.
Hmm.
So like, what have you done as of now in to take care of yourself, or what are some of your self-care techniques? Because again, it's just like when you're hustling and when you're in survival mode, bro, it's like there's no option. Like you just gotta go, like. But now, what are you doing nowadays to take care of yourself, bro?
Yeah, so I am the burnout king. I'm not as bad about it now, but back then I had no choice but to be, you know, working on 10 projects at the same time and, taking every single freelance gig that came my way because I couldn't turn down that money. So
Mm.
once I got to a place where I was actually making enough, um,
Now
I
fly.
was killing me. But once I got to a point where I was making enough money, I was able to um, start to say no. And that was beyond
Mm.
me because I always was just like, yes, let's do it. Let's collaborate.
The,
I'll work on this
the
project.
FU money, bro. The FU money.
And I was just stacking up stress. And, I would stay up super late. And especially when I moved to LA after graduation, like I was broke. Like I was 3 months behind on rent. I had eviction notices on my door every day. And all I could do was just like bury myself in new projects. So I started to learn, once I got to a point where I was comfortable and I didn't have to stress out about, onboarding new customers and chasing down people for invoices for projects I was working on. It took a lot of weight off of my shoulders and it
Yeah.
allowed me to like focus more on the projects that I really wanted to work on. So about that time is when, Futurist Customs came around and then, eventually Hustler Blueprint was born from that, from me living in LA. But for a long time, it was, just, you know, burning myself out and then trying to cope by journaling and staying focused. And, I'm also a big runner. So I always take care of my body. I always eat healthy. Um, so those were very helpful in me not spiraling downward
Right.
because when I did get super stressed out, I could just go for a run or go play basketball for a little bit and get my mind off of the work. But it's tough, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I could definitely resonate with that. Oh man, it's man, it never it's but again, but then as much as we want to say, because I went to the Emmanuel Achu and Matthew McConaughey event earlier today. They're speaking, he was speaking, it's just like it's called leaning into the chaos. And Marcus Aurelius and everybody, just stoicism is just like in the midst of all of that uncomfort is where the beauty blossoms of who we are meant to be. And because
Mhm.
again, if life was comfortable, there wouldn't be any innovation or advancement.
Yeah, and what you realize is, especially reading about the Stoics, is that it's always chaos. There's the problems are different. Obviously we've made it in some capacity now. We don't have to, struggle to feed ourselves, or we are in a place where we can give back. But it's new problems now.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a challenge. So once you get past that first hump, you realize that it's all perspective. And
Right.
it's how you learn to deal and cope with everything going on around you that really makes a difference in your mental health, in your physical health, in the health of people around you, the energy that you're transmitting to other people. um
Yeah,
yes.
that's a fact. And so, how was LA? How long? How long did you live there?
I lived there for 3.5 years.
And so,
And
how was LA
I mean,
coming from,
I have
Columbus?
great things to say about LA personally. LA was very good to me. At the time, I didn't choose to move there. I was gonna move wherever I got a job, and I just so happened to get a job working for USC Athletics. So moved out after graduation, and then very quickly realized that I was not going to be able to pay for an apartment out there on that salary. So I was right back in the mix of taking on freelance projects and struggling, and like my checks every week were the same amount of, like, my rent was half of what I made in a month. So I was living on a shoestring budget, struggling. Um, and then it being in that environment kind of pushed me over the hump. And you're around amazing designers, you're around amazing artists, you're around super talented people, and it really does weed out the people who are in it for the right reasons, and people who are just there for to be somebody that they're not. So
Right.
for me, during COVID, it was very tough. I was living in downtown LA, right by the Staples Center, and nobody was in downtown at all at the time. So I eventually decided to just pack up an SUV and move to Austin. I had never even been here before. Made the decision in like a week, and I was out of there.
Wow. Wow. And I mean, everybody was moving from LA. Everybody's moved to California to Austin. Everybody's like moving. It just seems like the magic there is gone. Because I almost went to USC. I got into USC for my graduate program, but I deferred for a year. I'm like, you know what? I was working on a project at a time. I'm like, yo, let me work on this project and let me see how far it can go. And of course, a year came by, and then of course this popped up. Now being a VC and whatever, but it was just kind of like when I looked at one, the school is expensive, and the scholarship they gave me $7,000 for a scholarship. I'm like, what?
It's 57,000 to go there. So you're like,
Bro, 57K, but to go there, they give you a 7,000, and after that, 20K in student loans. And I'm like, yo, bro, like, USC is cool, but LA doesn't have the same appeal like it once did back in the day. Like it just
yeah,
seems, and of course, everybody's moving from there, and of course, you see the writing on the wall. But I mean, of course, it's a great place to visit. The vibes, fire, weather's amazing. And there's a lot of cool stuff to do in LA, but to live there, um, because again, you're thinking about within the next 2 years or 2-3 years. And for me, I'm of course being young, yeah, but just being like again being very strategic because the choices that we make for people who are coming up or people who are literally changing the generational DNA, there's not a lot of room for error or yeah, there's not a lot of room for error. You got to be strategic and be very mindful of where you go. Because again, like there's this thing that Naval and a lot of people say the three most important choices that you ever make is what are you going to do with your life, who you're going to be with the rest of your life, and where you're going to live.
mm-hmm.
And of course, it's just like people just go through it, so make a choice so willy-nilly, but then those choices have consequences. It's like, whoa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very grateful for my time there, and I don't think that I would be as successful now if I didn't make that leap at the time. And back then,
Yeah,
you had to be in San Francisco, LA, or New York to really get a good design job. Like
absolutely.
even working as a designer in Austin, back then you were making half of what you would make in LA. So
Yeah.
COVID actually opened up those barriers and allowed a lot of people from different parts of the country to make that, big tech salary or, get those opportunities that they would have never otherwise been considered for because they didn't live in that city. So we're
Absolutely.
definitely breaking down some barriers right now.
Yeah, and that is so cool. That is so cool. I'm going to be mindful of your time, bro. So like that now I'm headed towards the end of the show. The last 15 minutes are kind of like reserved for big questions. So my first question is, what are three things that you have learned specifically this month?
Ooh, this month. So I think I shared this with you. I'm working on an NFT project right now. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
diving into that space for the first time has been very challenging and very rewarding at the same time. So I'm learning um, kind of how to build a community and how to give back to nonprofits through NFTs. And the space is constantly evolving. Even in the last month, it's changed so many times, especially with this bear market. So that's one big thing I've learned this month. The second one is I think I'm learning to be more mindful of my time. I am starting to learn to walk in gratitude for the first time. And I think that's something that I've always struggled with, especially, like we talked about earlier, being a designer, you can be in a very negative mindset where um, you're looking at your own work constantly of like, how can this be better? And that kind of seeps into the rest of your life. And I just now started to recognize that and see how I could put that pressure on other people as well because I have such high standards for myself. Um, so I'm learning to be more grateful of the people around me and of my experiences to, better myself. And the third thing, um, I'm trying to think of a good third.
It,
Oh,
it doesn't have to be deep. It doesn't have to be deep. It's just, what are you learning?
yeah, I'm also learning about the DeFi space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm just learning about like taking the crypto that I have and staking it and, creating another asset to build wealth over the long term. Um, and that's something that's pretty complicated and something that I overlooked when I first got into the space.
Right, right. That, yeah, it is something that's very, very, very complicated. But it's okay. It's okay. My next question for this section is, if there is one thing that you could change in the United States, what would it be?
That's a good question. Oh, because there's so many things that I would change. Um, I would, me personally, I would start at the education level. I think we need way more money at the early elementary, middle school, foundational, the core things that you're learning in school are no longer conducive to the world that we live in. So
Right.
you grow up learning to be a factory worker who is just handed the next thing on the, you know, utility belt. And, the world has changed. We need financial literacy in school. We need arts in school. We need design thinking in school. We need, um, there's so many areas that can be transformed just by starting at that very early level. So I think if we could get to a place where um, schools are not only changing how they teach people, but we're also valuing the teachers and the people that are doing it because, they're some of the lowest paid professionals in any space these days. And, a lot of times, like, for example, they just built this low income house right next to my apartment in Austin, and they are marketing it as a place for school teachers to live. And they're like 400 square foot apartments with one window. I'm like, what school teacher wants to live in a low income house? Like, that's insane. So we should be valuing our educators and transform the curriculum in schools so that we are setting people up for success and not, teaching them to take the SAT and test well, because I am someone who definitely struggled in school growing up. I wasn't good at any subject other than art, and I went through life thinking that I wasn't as smart as everybody else
Right.
because I tested at the bottom of my grade. So um, that's clearly not a great indicator for future success. And I think, having kids take the SAT and all of these tests to get into college, when you're not testing how someone thinks, you're not testing the way that um, they solve problems, is a huge, huge problem in our country.
Yeah. Ditto. I agree. I agree that in because again, there's so much power in education. So much power in education. So much power like education and knowledge of history. For me specifically, I'm a history buff. Honestly, if it wasn't for anything, if I was not on the path now, I would be a history professor. I would be moving. I won't be surprised if I would become a history professor in my later life. I want to be. I desire to be a professor, specifically teaching and helping the next generation, because there's so much power in when we're able to give the knowledge and not even give the knowledge, but also help the children or whoever that is we're teaching and we are being taught by, in order to apply that knowledge and transmute it into reality. That's such a education is the key, not in the way that it's built right now, but it always will be forever the key.
For sure. And there's so many new ways of learning. Nowadays you can, pop into YouTube and learn how to do anything. Um, but how many people really, everybody knows that, but how many people actually go about doing that and then, create skill sets that they can, use to, become an electrician or, whatever their trade is. I think we overlook those kids that struggle in school and leave them at a disadvantage, and that's the core of a lot of problems we have in this country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next question is, what is the definition of success to you? What does success mean to you?
Success to me is more about the impact that I leave. So it's not about having some fancy car and a mansion and, having millions of dollars in the bank, because, I know from living in LA, you are surrounded by people like that and they're absolutely miserable. So I
Mm.
had to, through journaling, really sit down and say, like, what makes my life successful? At the end of the day,
Mm.
when I'm 70, 80 years old and I look back at my life, like, what would I be the most proud of? And that would be the impact that I leave on other people, and making sure that people who grow up like myself have opportunities and outlets to succeed in life, and they know about those. And um, I think that's the core of what I'm trying to accomplish at this point.
So people really miserable out there in LA?
I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you even see it at Capital Factory. There's people who with $1 million valuations who are, walking around stressed out, and um, success and money is not an equal indicator for success. It's really about taking care of your mental health, taking care of your physical health, leaving an impact on others, and um, the media, it's been marketed to us that money will just equal, you know, all of your problems in life being solved. And that may be true to an extent. Money definitely makes things better, but if you're miserable on the inside,
Mm.
you're going to continue to be miserable just with money. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Bro, we gotta heal, bro. The world's gotta heal, bro. But I really feel like the the consciousness. A lot of people are becoming awakened to just healing themselves. But again,
Mhm.
nothing is new under the sun. Shout out to Ecclesiastes. Solomon or the king even said it himself that these riches do nothing. It's all vanity. But even in the midst of vanity, it is good to enjoy whatever we have, but never forget where it all comes from and who God is. So that's a fact. That's a fact. People get tricked out here, bro. Um, my last question for you is: what are three things that you would tell to your 18 year self?
I would definitely tell myself to trust the process,
Mm,
to follow your heart, because me at 18, I really wanted to pursue art, and I was persuaded against that,
mm,
which would have, it all worked out, but that's a part of my journey. But I would tell myself to just continue on that path. I could be so much further as an artist if I didn't take that, 4 or 5 years off. I would also tell myself to just be more mindful of the people in my life who have made an impact on me. So
mm.
I think moving around and pursuing your dreams, it's tough from a family perspective because you leave a lot of relationships behind. You leave, you're not able to go to the graduation parties and the birthdays and all of that. Um, and it's definitely something, not that I regret, but um, it's something that's tough on you when you're going through it. So I would also tell myself to not drink so much. I would definitely I would definitely tell myself that partying isn't everything, slow down a
Yeah,
little bit, take some time for
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
That's another reason that I kind of got away from art for 4 or 5 years,
yeah,
is that
yeah,
I got caught up in the scene, and um, was just partying and doing my thing, and not taking enough time to really appreciate where I was and what I was doing. And
yeah,
those years kind of flew by without any meaningful um there wasn't many meaningful events during that time, because I was constantly drinking and smoking, and just pushing all of my real problems to the side. So
mm.
I would definitely tell myself to put the cap on the bottle.
That's real, man. That's real. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your vulnerability, man. That's real, bro. Man, authentic. This is good. This is why I love this. Man, I love this stuff so much. I love doing this. I love this show because again, we're all learning. There's so much wisdom that we can all get from each other. That being said, the way that I usually close out the show is the speak life section. As a believer, but also just in general, words are powerful. Me, my artistry is through words most primarily. And the words that we speak over other people can make or break somebody. So, and I've been in a position where I have literally almost broken and ruined somebody people's life. But ever since then, I've made a commitment to speak abundantly, do the work, and understanding to speak life to each and every individual. So here we go, Brady, bro. You're one cool mother flipper, bro. Bro, I mean, one, your sense of style, man, fire. But most importantly, your heart, your again, we just met last week, but dude, I'm just again, in life, I'm a big believer that shout out to the alchemist. The universe conspires in our favor when we are achieving or moving towards our personal legend. And you will be connected with people who are on a similar wavelength, and no matter what shapes, sizes, or whatever. Obviously, I've only known you for less than 2 weeks, but your vulnerability, your abundance, your support, your honesty, your integrity, and your willingness to even cop onto the podcast, your willingness and just your encouragement, right? Because I'm new here, whatever. Me coming to Austin was a lot for me, and I was just like, "Whoa, am I good? Whatever, whatever." I'm always down for an adventure, but it's just like, whoa. But I'm just very grateful for your positivity, your attitude, your willingness to share dope information and dope stuff that I haven't even interacted or seen. I can tell that you're such a genuine and dope person in the way seeing you interact. See, you saying, "Yeah, bro, sure, I'll come out to the fiesta." I don't know what this is, but like you said, yes. I'm like, "Yo, bro," and being able to introduce you to Jared and you meeting whatever, and it's just like it's so cool. You never know who you're going to meet, bro. But I'm super grateful that we've crossed paths. You are so talented, bro. Your talents, your design from your website, whatever. And I'm super excited for what this new friendship is going to birth out of from this and everything moving forward. I'm so grateful to have met you and have so much gratitude for you just taking your most valuable resources, your time, energy, and your health and your emotional, like whatever, to be able to be on the platform today, be on this pod, man. And thank you for allowing me to share your story to the audience and just for being so real and honest, man. I'm super grateful for the connection that we've made, that we've created, and that we have doing it, and just being abiding to the spirit of the universe and just moving forward, bro. I'm inspired by you. Your trust me, believe me, man. Like this again, bro. I'm very grateful that you didn't have to give it to me for free, but you did, and you just for me, I do believe there's good people. There's always good people in the world, but like, man, that's love, and I accept this, and you don't understand like the impact that this had for me on me, the journal, like, because I understand how it is to give somebody or to create something for someone or just to give something, the law of giving and the seven spiritual success. And giving doesn't have to be even a gift. It can be words, appreciation, and knowledge, or a silent prayer or something. But there's so much power in that, and there's so much power in receiving. So I'm grateful to have been able to receive such a wonderful gift in my favorite colors, by the way. And thank you.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. It's been a pleasure being on the podcast, and all of our conversations and interactions have been so fruitful. So I'm very grateful to have met you, and look forward to building together for sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Where can the people plug your stuff? Where can the people find you at? Where can the people see what's popping in Brady's world?
Awesome. So you can find me on Instagram at bradyp.design. You can follow the Hustler Blueprint. You can find that on Amazon, um, available in black and orange, my favorite color. So yeah, we got some dope projects on the way as well. So I'll be plugging that stuff soon enough. But hey, man, I thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Definitely looking forward to having more conversations, and bless, man.
Bless, bless, bless. All right, everybody. This episode is done, and we are